My name is Mark Nicholas. I'm the minister at Gorebridge Parish. I've been there nearly 15 years now, and I'm the father of 2 girls and 6 boys, so that's why I'm not that well shaven or dressed. I would like to start by looking at Jesus says to Peter, his first thing he says to Peter when Peter says, I love you, is feed my lambs. And there's a double meaning there, and I'm not sure that it was the Holy Spirit's intention that we get away from the double meaning. Does that mean new Christians? Does that mean young people? And there's an ache for the missing generations. I see it in churches all through the country, people bewildered as to how we're going to reach them. And we do not live in a generation of experts in how to do church. So please, I come in all humility. What we are doing, we're hanging on by our fingernails. The margin between success and failure is so small, and it's really only by God's grace. However, we are blessed with an enormous number of young people. I say an enormous number. We're a church of about, depends on a Sunday. I'm sure you're the same. If everybody turned up, it would be a couple of hundred. Usual Sunday would be about 130. It's going up a bit. And of those 20 or 30, and after we've done a missions trip, about 50 would be teenagers. So it was 2009, and was praying about getting a youth worker, that phrase we use. And we had something set up. We'd set up a local youth charity called Gorebridge Opportunities Go, been set up by one of our members in the youth group. It had a life of its own as a charity, and we were looking for 20 hours of a person. And I'll sit with my wife, who took over the kids ministry when we first got there in '99, on the understanding that we get a youth worker at some point. So this was 2009, so she'd been very patient. And we had someone set up who was doing the work with Go, 20 hours, and we thought if we pay another 20 hours, then we can get a worker. We kind of build a job out of those 2 things. And we had to stretch out the tent pegs, and I have to tell you that we had a plan A, and plan A went up in smoke. I don't know about you, but that seems to be the way the Lord works with me. And so I was stopped in my tracks, and I prayed, Lord, give us an Isaac, not an Ishmael. Smartest prayer I ever prayed. And I'd just pray it. I'd find myself in between, just going from place to place, saying, Lord, give us an Isaac, not an Ishmael. We don't want to engineer this in a human fashion. We want someone. And then on Remembrance Sunday 2009, Ross Waters and his wife Fee got the wrong bus. Well, they got the right bus, but it was going in the wrong direction. They were heading into town, I think perhaps to maybe go to Kenny's church. They tried local churches in Mayfield, and instead of going into Edinburgh, they came out to Gorebridge, because Birkenside is the end of the world for Lothian buses, and Birkenside's the far end of Gorebridge. So off they got, saw the church, saw it was open, came in. First thing one of my elders said to them was, get your hands out your pockets, son. Thankfully, Ross took that in good stead, and it turned out that he'd grown up at St. Mungo's Balerno. That's where he'd been nurtured in faith, and the only time we've ever had a team from there, they were there to help us that Remembrance Sunday. And we have a couple of people that we've nicked from St. Malcolm of the Round, and we're very grateful for them. And they've bedded in, and it turned out one of them had led Ross in a cell group. So they stayed. And then about 2 weeks in, Ross said, I'm the ICC doing youth and community work, could I have a 20-hour placement? And so we paid him a pittance, but we cleared his fees, and so started a process of building him a job. We had to stretch out the tent pegs, you see. We didn't have the money to do it. We were probably, at the time Ross appeared, about an 80,000 income a year church. And we were just getting to that point where we were finding our own. We did not have the resources, and we had to commit time on time. We had a 3-year plan to get him full-time, and we pulled it off in 15 months because Ross refused to get a job stacking shelves at the co-op. He just gave ministry. He did ministry. And I have to ask you this, when we're looking at people working in our churches, Bill Hybels says, how much ministry can you get for $100? And it usually stops people in their tracks. And the answer is about $100 worth. If you're going to take someone's life, if you're going to build a ministry, you have to build them a job. You have to sort it out so that he and his wife can get home, bring up a family so that they can bed in. And we've tried to do that. And that means sacrificial giving. That means going around the people in the congregation. We've got people up there giving by 50 quid a month just to make sure Ross could stay. And indeed, on sacrificial giving, we wouldn't be able to do what we were doing. That's my 5 minutes. Gee whiz. Can I have grace for a couple more? Teach them to tithe. There's no harm in it. Don't teach us new law, but you'll be amazed what you might lose. Team ministry means going deep with him. I've spent lots of time with Ross, and he's grown me and I've grown him. We found unusual partners because we've got a youth charity on the side. We go looking for funds from Lloyd's TSB and Tynesk Leader and the police and whoever it may be. They've helped to fund things on that side. Although I have to say, Ross now works 6 hours a week with Go and 34 plus 20 with us. Unusual partners in that we also partner with Young Life, and we did that because Ross brought that association with him, although we've tried to reshape the way Young Life do things by saying, look, Gen Yers are so unchurched that they're not spooked by church. Their parents are, but they aren't, so let's do Young Life work in the church. We've had to learn not to despise the day of small things when we were paying for a guy and it was really tiny, following through the relational networks of the young people we had there, mostly birthed by my wife and I. We were also, the thing is when I first came to faith at St. John's of Kings Park in Dalkeith, I looked around the church, I went on a grandparent hunt. I was looking to find people who are in their 70s and 80s and 90s who could tell me that life with Jesus was a life worth living. I'm telling you, just because you are old doesn't disqualify you. Indeed, it qualifies you, and the quality of the life you live before them will make that transformation. Give them a place to belong, where there's family. Forget youth church. I'm so sorry if you run a youth church. I mean, punch me later. But church is intended to be multi-generational. And the thing that gives me great heart, some of the older people who don't like the changes, and we've been very good for the growth of some other local churches who are predominantly elderly. But some of them say that's a young person's church now. And actually we don't. We were told to do a census. God hadn't forbidden us like he forbade David, so it was okay. And we had a look, and the division of generations was absolutely even right across on a Sunday morning, which is really unusual. And I'm so thankful because I've got a sheriff principal who tells off judges by the week and then meets all the young people and shakes their hand and says, how are you doing when they're coming in? He's the first person to greet them when they're new in. We sent them to Morocco on mission trips where they get stones thrown at them. We sent them to Powys on mission trip. That's really where, for camp, that's where a lot of them come to faith. And to Gilmerton, bright, sparkly center of the universe, where the wonderful folks at Liberton do their stage and slam. We do not do childcare, we challenge them. We're not there to entertain them. My goodness me, it can be fun. But we challenge them with the gospel. They're disciples that we're bringing on, and that means that the young people are leading for the young people. The next generation of leadership are already there, some of them giving up as students, some of them making decisions in terms of what they're doing for their career. Oh man, I'm right over my time. Natasha self-harmed. She was stood by the library entrance and a pastor. And I said, you were waiting there when I went to church, and you're waiting there now I'm coming back. Why don't you come in and wait for your friend inside because it's warm there? She couldn't tell a word of truth. She lived in a fantasy land. And she's now studying up at the Highland Theological Seminary. There's Ryan, who was uncontrollable at the youth club because he would climb up on the backs of son and he'd just shout you down. I mean, he just had the best patter on earth, and you couldn't get one over on Ryan. He'd just tell you, why should I do what you say? And he now knows Jesus for himself, and just as well because his mom and dad split up and his dad came back from Afghanistan missing most of his fingers from an IED. And then there's Big Claymore. His granddad was a gangster who came to faith in the 80s and would just about beat people up into the kingdom. His own son was an alcoholic, and his daughter-in-law was an alcoholic. And there was wee Claymore, whose sister died. And Claymore was uncontrollable at Gorebridge Primary, which is a school full of nutters. And he was sent off to Stirling for 1-to-1, and Claymore now knows Jesus for himself. He was in my house this morning. He is 2 men big. Some of you know him. I saw the nods at the back. Love one another, Jesus said, by this you'll know my disciples. That's how we get life in all its fullness. It starts and ends with Jesus. What God is looking for is authentic Christian communities throughout Scotland where people are jealous of what we have, who want to belong, who, just like was being told to us, will cross the hurdle of coming into church. People will crawl over glass to find authentic community, and it begins and ends in Jesus. That's what young people need, more than all of the fancy stuff that we can give them. And if I've offended you, please come to me so I can apologize in person. And if there's anything that I've said that you want more information, I'll be happy to help. Thank you so much.